I just installed Ubuntu. Here's Kali Linux. So we can test things in here as well. If you guys have any suggestions, just start chatting away. Looks like we already have a few viewers, so thank you. And we'll go from there. Cool. All right, so if you're just tuning in now, we literally just started, so thank you for tuning in and watching this. We have a few things I can cover. I can talk about the Gigabyte board specifically. We can talk about overclocking, benchmarking. We'll load up some games. The good news is I can restart the machine and still live stream the BIOS. So if you guys want to see changes to the BIOS that's specific to Gigabyte, let me know. Just chat away, and I'll answer any questions you have. So with that being said, let's check how these are coming. Let's see, let's fix this a little bit. I'm not going to bother doing a lot of customization in here because of the time frame that we have. So, all right. So if you guys need to see anything run in Linux, let me know. This is just a virtual machine. Same with Kali. And like I said, we have games as well. Okay, so we already got a question here. If you switch to 4 cores and 8 threads, can you overclock more? So I have done that. It didn't really make much of a difference. Originally I had some problems because of the way I was setting voltage. But with 8 core 16 thread, I hit 4.15 gigahertz, and I hit 4.2 on 2 cores, but it didn't really, that's negligible. So right now it's not a thermal issue. It has something to do with the actual chip just either leaking too much or whatever happens to cause instability at there. I mean, when we get to the point where we benchmark the the different CPU configurations, we can configure that then. So when we start changing core count, we'll fix it. So yeah, we can definitely look at that. Let me see if I can fix a setting. Looks like something's a little off here. So thank you for that question. All right, I'm going to fix a delay on the webcam, and hopefully that solves the issue. It might reset. Cool. Excellent. So hopefully that fixed the stream issue. It looks like my mic was off a little bit. Okay, so we should be back up and running now. Thank you guys for being patient with that. So we got 7 people watching. If anyone can't see the comment too clearly on the right side of the screen, we were asked about benchmarking 4 and 8 cores. Going to 4 core, 8 threads, if you will, did not really give me, or I don't think would give me any additional overclocking headroom. I hit 4.15 on 8 core 16 thread, and the highest I got was 4.2 when I went down to 2 cores. So it's pretty negligible. So thanks again for the question, and again, ask away guys, because I can boot into BIOS. We can show you some features in the Gigabyte BIOS from there. We can do overclocking, etc. Let's see. One more thing, when the 1500, will they be able to achieve higher overclocks? I'm not sure yet, so I haven't seen any leaks. Because it's based off the same die, and even when you get the 4 core model, it's a CCX cluster of 2+2, so I don't really anticipate any different kind of overclocking. If they ever did a single CCX cluster with just 4 cores on one piece with no interconnect, I don't expect a big difference there, because the rumor is that the other dies are lower quality binned units from the 1700 and 1800Xs that didn't really quite achieve all 8 cores successfully, so they disabled a couple for stability. Now, as the process matures, that's going to be non-existent, and I think overclocking will just continue to get better. But until then, it's really hard to say. You know, these are supposed to be the highest quality chips when you get the 1700X and 1800X, and they only overclock 200 megahertz higher than an R700, 1700. So it's, you know, time will tell. Okay, so we have one virtual machine running. Here's a second one that's running. I have a Ubuntu 64-bit Kali, and if I go at the system settings, let's see if I can. So that's using. I have that set to use 4 cores, 2 gigs of RAM. This is set to. Come on, 2 cores, 2 gigs of RAM. We can bump it up, but I'd have to stop it. So even on stock frequencies, let's load CPU-Z. And that's loading now on the other screen, so I'll move that over in a second. Here we go. All right, so benchmarking. This is stock frequency, but I'll be able to bench it, and even with the stock 3.5 gigahertz, because the way VMware can handle resources, I'm still breaking 2000 on a single thread. I haven't touched the CPU at all. And as you can see on the left-hand side, 3.5 gigahertz is right there. It's boosting on 100 megahertz over, so that's the XFR working successfully. So that's actually not a bad result. 17,271 at stock 3.4 or 3.5, if you will, with XFR. While a couple VMs are running, and I should note I also have you know, Chrome running. I have Slack running for my buddies, so we can chat with them. So it handles multitasking extremely well, and that's what I wanted to focus on with this particular benchmark. So let's do a 10-core, 20-thread comparison. At 16 threads, the Ryzen is still faster when you go with stock clock 6950. Now this is just a synthetic benchmark, so it's going to change. You know, obviously the 6900 series Intels can overclock pretty damn well. I know people can. I think on the 6-core and 8-core, or is it? Yeah, the 6-core models will do over 4 gigahertz no problem. So that kind of changes some things. However, if I go to, I thought I had one higher than 4, but maybe not. So here's a 6700K synthetic benchmark. Obviously it'll get destroyed in multi-thread, but single thread it's pretty comparable. Now if I overclock this, you're going to see these numbers go up even more. I'd expect that to be about 2300 on the single. So we got 6 people watching now. Thank you guys for tuning in. For those who missed it, please just start asking questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. And if we want to run benchmarks, if we want to do gaming, we can do that as well. I am not the best PC gamer, so if I suck on a game you want me to test, you can make fun of me. That's fine. I have thick skin. So let's see what else we can test. Let's load up Cinebench. So I'm going to run Cinebench while I have these VMs running, and Chrome and Slack and all that other stuff. So let's just run it as is. Now I'm at stock voltages too. I didn't change the CPU configuration at all. Oh, of course I did the freaking graphics card. So while I wait for that, that is a GTX 1070 running. Antonis, thanks for Antonis, thank you for providing that. For 4.8 gigahertz is pretty damn awesome. So 2280 and 9500. So to put that in perspective, when you compare it to the Ryzen 1700X or any Ryzen chip, single thread at 4 gigahertz would be about 2300 as well. So the IPC on that test is a little bit better. Doesn't really translate into game frame rate every time, as you've seen. But you know, there's that. Multi-core is obviously totally different. It has a lot more threads. Lower and higher RAM clock tests. I have it set to, I believe, XMP right now. Yeah, so I'm running, don't mind that fluctuation, that's just the power management, but it's running 1330, so, or 1333, just with the BCLK underclocking that a little bit. But if there's a specific test you want me to check at a different RAM speed, let me know. This isn't the fastest RAM on the market. I haven't actually pushed it over 3000, so I can run the stock 2133 or I can do 2666 in case you want to see how that influences something. Okay, so CPU, let's run it. This is the multi-core. So we're using all 8 cores and 12 and 16 threads, again, while I have virtual machines running. Now these aren't really doing anything right now, but I'll go ahead and load a few things. Let's load Firefox. Let's switch back to Ubuntu. Let's load Firefox again. So let's start really pushing it. And as you can tell, this isn't getting choppy. That's still rendering those frames, no problem. Sacco, you're welcome. Let me know what specific tests you are curious about for how RAM would affect performance. So I got a 1315 Cinebench score with all of that stuff running in the background. Now I believe this score is mine. I'd have to double check. It might not be because I haven't tested it in a while. But if I close some of this down in Overclock, my Cinebench score has gone up quite a bit. It scores really well. Yeah, 975. So this did that with all that stuff running. Let me shut down these VMs and we can run it again. So let's see. Well, I might as well put it on this screen so you guys can see something on how I guess VMware works. So let's shut this down. Let's go to Kali and shut this down. All right. So let's close this. Let's close Chrome. I'm going to leave a couple things open, just stupid stuff like that, because that's not really resource intensive. I don't have much else running. So let's just run it one more time with all that shut off. Okay, so CPU Z. Yeah, we can, we'll do that. Once this part's done, we'll go back into the BIOS. I prefer to change the RAM in the BIOS and not the Ryzen master, because the Gigabyte board, so here's the thing, the Gigabyte board works really well out of the box. And my fan profile is set to quiet, by the way, so don't mind these temps. I can explain more on that in a minute. But when Ryzen Master changes the clock speeds of your RAM, it makes you reboot anyway. So with that being said, if you're going to reboot, you might as well reboot into the BIOS and change it there, because I find that you doing it that way is a little more stable than waiting for the Windows environment. So already that went up a couple hundred points just by shutting down a couple things, so that's good. And then we'll overclock the 8-core in a little while. So with that being said, if we're going to change the RAM speed, that was the next question. No, I don't want to save. I'm going to boot into the UEFI, and we'll show you how that looks there. So if the screen drops, I actually have a transition screen while I shut it down and get into the BIOS, so we don't jack up this feed. So stand by for a second. We'll get into that right now. You can still chat and talk, and we'll go from there. All right. Gotta tell the wife what's going on. So as soon as I see this, we'll pull it up. Let's see. So here's what's funny. Let's do this real quick. So actually that wasn't too bad. The UEFI is a little temperamental with Gigabyte. It doesn't always boot super fast. It's inconsistent. So with that being said, I wouldn't expect 20-second or 15-second post times. I am running 2 sticks, Sacco. I've had mixed results. I've had boot times that'll be only 15-20 seconds, but most of the time it's over 40 from a cold boot. If I restart while the system's running, it boots up much faster. So actually, let's show you guys something really cool. Okay, so the Gigabyte board, there's a lot of people that want to test different CPU configurations to find out how a Ryzen 5 or Ryzen 3 will perform. Now, what's cool about the Gigabyte board is I can actually choose which cores and CCX clusters we use. So the Prime 370 takes a while too. Yeah, it seems to be a common issue. From what I understand, the MSIs and Asus, well, not the entry level, but I think that, or not entry level, but I think the Crosshair and the MSI boards still have a decent post time. Yeah, ITX AM4 boards, not for you. So I actually looked into that, and I guess part of the issue is ITX boards are basically 3D printed to a point where there's the layer of wire, if you will, for the bus to talk to each other is on top of it. It's not just like flat, because they have to jam so much into a small board, and because everyone knows how shady the launch was with AMD, the motherboard manufacturers really had to kind of push out the easier products to produce first, make sure they worked well. And now that they've learned some things, especially with RAM and how it's handling the chipset and everything, they can make revisions, and the ITX board should be a much smoother launch. So anyway, downcore control, check this out. This I just found today, and I am super excited to start playing with this. So we don't know, at least I don't know, with the Ryzen 3 2-core. I think, no, they're not doing 2, are they? I think it's just 4. 4-core, no hyper-threading, but correct me if I'm wrong, guys. It might be 2 with 4 threads. But, so you can do 1 plus 1, 2 plus 0, 3, 2 plus 2, and this is the big one because Ryzen 5 is 2 plus 2. A lot of people thought it was going to be a 4.0 because of performance, and everyone said, oh, it'll be a better gaming chip because that interconnect between the two CCX clusters won't exist anymore, but it's not the case. So I am very much looking forward to benching this on games, the 2 plus 2. If you go into the Ryzen Master for overclocking, when you set it to 4-core only, it disables 4 cores. On the same CCX cluster, so you're only using 1, and that's nice for performance. So from a software side, that's awesome, but it's not representative or a fair representation of what the Ryzen 5 will actually do. Yeah, it is a great board. So we wanted to do RAM speed, so let's go back, and I'm sorry because I don't remember the exact frequent speeds I got. I'm pretty sure it was just over 2,000, like 2030, and we just broke 17,000 on multi-thread. So advanced memory, our frequency settings, XMP profile disabled, and now you can see that 2133 shows up. So we'll go back into the BIOS after if you want, guys, unless there's something else you want me to check right now. I'll hang out for just a minute and we'll reboot and do that benchmark again. Advanced memory settings, this is where if you did manual overclocking, you can actually change CAS latency, timings and stuff like that. And so basically, if you have a RAM stick that's struggling getting over 3,000 megahertz, you could technically add latency to the sticks and get a little bit more speed, and see how that affects performance versus the sacrifice of latency. I prefer to have really tight timing. 2666 is fine for what I'm using it for. I do a little bit of gaming, but I have a GTX 1070, and even at stock configs, the performance is good on a 1080p monitor. Yeah, Tonus, we did a 4+0 config on the last live stream, so if you want to check that out. That stream we ran Counter-Strike Go and we were still pushing 300 frames a second, even with a 4.0. So let's go back to auto. Specifically do 2 plus 2. Yeah, what was that, Tamag? I'm not going to pronounce that correctly, so I apologize. But yeah, why don't we do this RAM test for Antonis, and then we'll reboot. We'll go in a 2 plus 2 configuration, and we can finally start looking at some Ryzen 5 comparable benchmarks. So let's see. I think that covers it. There's voltage. We're going to go into this later, so let's just reboot now. And I'm going to transition out of the BIOS for a sec just so we don't kill the feed when I reboot and kill this output. All right. There's something else really cool later too, guys. I actually have a camera inside the desktop because this motherboard has RGB lighting. I wanted to show you how the interface controls the lights on the board, how quickly that affects the light configuration, because I think that was pretty cool. So we got some nerdy stuff on our agenda. Okay, so if you guys have any questions while we're waiting on this, let me know. It's booting up right now, so it should be up in just a second here. It did a restart, so when you change RAM timings, even if you have a fast post time, it kills the machine for a minute to change that mode on the RAM itself. Okay. Okay, so we're back up. I'm going to give the computer a sec to finish loading. Let's load CPU Z. Let's see. Alright, it's loading now. So after this, again, we're going to try 2 plus 2 later, because that was a new finding and I'm really excited to give that a shot. SPD, if I select the RAM stick, it'll show me what the RAM's capable of. Benchmark. Let me make sure nothing else is running on delayed start here, just to be fair. So again, we broke 2000 on 2666 and we broke 17,000 on 2666 from multi-core. The CPU is operating at stock frequencies. We haven't touched it. So just because Ryzen Master was running on the last benchmark, let's let that run as well. Okay. So let's do it. So on this test, it's not RAM dependent, or RAM speed dependent, it seems. It's pretty much identical. Yeah, even the multi-core is within a margin of error, so it didn't really affect that. So while we are at a low RAM speed, which is probably the least preferred configuration, 8-core stock with low RAM speed is not what a lot of people are interested in, so we can switch it back. While I'm waiting for more questions from you guys, one thing I want to point out with Ryzen, the Ryzen 1600X, the 1700X, and the 1800X have what's called a 20-degree offset. So what that means is this number on the left-hand side right here, the temperature readout, is wrong. Anytime you see at least for now, I don't know if BIOS updates are going to change it, but subtract 20 degrees, and that's how hot the CPU actually is. It's only on those particular 3 processors. If the regular 1700 does not have that offset. The reason why AMD did that was because they wanted to force a slightly more aggressive fan profile, I think, for system builders, because they have like a BIOS that will just react and apply certain fan speed based off temperature, and it seems that AMD wants these to run a little bit cooler. I don't know if it's just to play it safe or what, but that was the explanation they gave. So with that being said, this room is about 74 degrees right now, 73, and I have an ambient temp of 32 degrees, 33 degrees. If I benchmark, you saw it hit 70, which means it's really only about 50. With that last, let's see, what else am I missing with that? This is a $50 air cooler. I'm not doing anything crazy for cooling. It's an MSI Core Frozer. Actually, yep, hopefully I can line this up well. This is the box. It's a MSI Core Frozer L. It's only $50 and it's pretty easy to find. It comes with all the hardware you need. And what I like is it actually came with an extra fan clip set. So if you want to do a push-pull, you can have fans on both sides of the CPU cooler, and the thing is pretty massive. You can't really hear it. So you got 2277 single and 18375 multi. Can you answer if you're running at stock RAM speeds or not? Because I can overclock this to... This thing overclocks like crazy. I got really lucky. So I can run the same frequency as you just to see how the Gigabyte board compares to the Asus Prime. So when you see that, let me know. And if anyone else that's watching has questions, please let me know as well. I can answer them for you. We can do everything. We can play games. We can load Crysis. I know that was a question earlier, so I'm going to load Crysis in a little bit, show you frame time performance. Okay, so you are running stock RAM. So let's do this. And in an effort to save time, I think I have a profile set. That's at 4100 megahertz. Let's do a new profile because I don't want it to change my RAM either. Okay, so what the hell? All right, so we're going to leave the stock RAM. We're going to overclock to 4, it was? 3.925, okay. Well, I'm going to leave the, just because we're live streaming, let's bump up the voltage a little bit. I don't want to take any chances. I've hit 4.15 gigahertz at, it was like 1.42 volts, I think. It crashed once, so I benchmarked it a few times at 1.387, and it worked fine for a long time, but it eventually crashed. So when I kept it at 4.1, I bumped it up even more, just to not let it die out on me. All right, so 3,925, 1.38 volts. We're running 32 gigs of RAM in this kit. I know you have 64, but if we're running the same speed, it shouldn't impact the performance too much. So we're going to hit apply. It's probably going to have me reboot. Yep. Now Ryzen Master is going to take over overclocking the CPU so the motherboard doesn't. So let's restart. And I'm going to transition out on that note. Okay, so we're answering Sako's questions right now, but if you guys have more questions in the meantime, please let me know while we're waiting. I could save you some time. 2 plus 2. I know we're going to do the 2 plus 2 configuration after we run this benchmark. So that's that. And if you guys are watching and if you haven't subscribed yet and you'd like this type of stuff, subscribe. I don't really do this a ton, so it's not like I'm spamming for, you know, ad money or anything like that. I just like talking about computer hardware and I like answering questions. So if you like this type of content, when I do make a video, it's usually pretty in-depth. I have a Gigabyte motherboard review coming out in the next couple days, and it's over an hour long. It'll be broken up into chapters, but there's a lot to cover with Gigabyte, and I can show you some of that during the stream here. All right, so we're already back. Let's see, every time I switch scenes, Google decides to do something funny on Chrome. Okay, so I believe you said you have an 1800X, so your voltage can be a little bit lower than mine to be safe. Ryzen Master is asking to run again, so that's good. Let's let that load. Okay, so to confirm and match what you have, Sako, let's see. In the super chat donation, I'm not sure what that is. Is that me? If it is, let me know if I'm doing something stupid, because I don't mind. Anyway, so we are overclocked now at 3.92, 1067 megahertz. So we're running the stock speed. I'll answer that question in just a moment about the satisfaction with this processor, because it's good. I have mixed feelings. It's not perfect. Super chat donation based. I'm not sure what that means. Sorry. Okay, so let's bench it now and compare. Again, we've waited just a little bit, so any delayed system starts aren't affecting it. So now we're at 2286. So that should be comparable. Let's see. My BCLK seems to be a little lower because I'm not actually running that speed yet. Now the multi-core is excellent. Okay, so you got 2277 and 18375. Right now this is at 2287, so again that's negligible, that's within the margin of error. And 19401, so I'm not sure if something to do, I don't know if that's an XFR thing or just the motherboard performance bias. I did see, because I mean, we all like to watch more than our own stuff or do our own research, and I've watched a few other videos on overclocking results, and I've noticed that some of the high-end boards have different performance benefits in different tests. Actually your ASRock board, I think it was Asus, the Asus 370 Prime at the same frequency seems to outperform the Gigabyte board on tests like Firestrike, but then there's other tests in certain games like Gears of War 4, where this particular board produces higher frame rates than the Asus board with the exact same drivers and hardware. So the motherboards are making an impact on performance, and I think that's part of why you see such ridiculously wide benchmarking results. And that kind of segues into your question about the how satisfied I am with this processor. It is a performance beast on multi-thread. Single thread is good, and these synthetics benchmarks are just synthetic. It's not like what you feel. I have noticed that some things, even though it should be insanely fast compared to my old computer, they didn't feel any faster. And if anything, my older i7, I had a 3770K. There was a couple little programs like you load something small or load a new tab in Internet Explorer and just dumb things like that, or Chrome I should say. It just instantly loaded, and this one had some growing pains. It seems like the new BIOS and other updates from drivers like chipset drivers have alleviated some of that, but it's not like the second I click it I get it. I don't know if you just noticed that. You probably can't tell when I click, but even when I click File Explorer, there was just a half-second delay, or if I open a program there's a half-second delay. So there's some weird latency stuff going on. it's significantly better than since I bought it, and as long as you're operating it within safe overclocks, it's still really stable. Now that I've ironed all of that out, when I do stuff like video editing in Adobe Premiere, which is here, it's much faster. And because these temps aren't right in the top left corner here, I'm really at 40 degrees centigrade right now, or 38 degrees when that drops. When you do high overclocking with Ryzen Master, it disables that cool and quiet feature. So it's once you pass a certain threshold, so it's not going to spin down the cores. They're staying at 4 gigahertz the whole time. Yeah, the R5 1400 should be a noticeable upgrade. When you look at the IPC performance, like man, I closed it. Let's load CPU-Z again because I want to show you something. This isn't really fair because we're running 8 cores overclocked, but I want to show you clock for clock something real quick, because when you compare it to can't write in the chat. When you compare it to an FX series, even the 8000 series, which is an 8 core, it's pretty substantial. Oh, and by the way, you should see that these scores would slowly go up if you keep running this because of the Sense MU, or I forgot, Sense UI. Basically, there's a branch prediction algorithm that's in the processor that helps store certain cache. So when you call on similar instructions on the processor, it's more readily available, which helps performance. So let's load, oops. Okay, Pentium, that'll just be comical. I know, oh, here we go. Well, let's go single core. Let's pick the 8350 because it's also at 4 gigahertz. So when you look at single core performance, again, this is a synthetic benchmark, so it's not the most accurate way of representing real world performance. But at 4 gigahertz versus 4 gigahertz, it's roughly double the single core performance. And when you look at this, if you double this to, it's not, I mean, so the FX 8300 series is 8 cores, but they're not full cores. They share resources with another. So it's really like a, it's not like a CCX cluster, but one of the units inside that does calculations is shared. So you're kind of hampered in certain performance. It's not a true 8 core. Was it Tamago Eater? No, I can do higher on the BIOS. You can do manual overclocking. Yeah, 3.9 is a great overclock for any Ryzen chip, because if you go past that, it starts requiring significantly more voltage and you barely get any more performance. The highest multi-thread I got, I think, was like 2100 or 21,000, and my single broke 2400. That was the highest I've hit so far, and that's just trying to not totally burn out my processor. Yeah, so BCLK 100, that is motherboard specific. It should just always be 100, but this Gigabyte board likes to fluctuate just slightly. Right now it says 99.8. When I've done overclocking and restarts or BIOS flashing, I've hit 100.3. The Gaming 5 does not have an unlocked BCLK, so I can't change it. If you want that and you want to just get a little bit more performance, whether it be fine-tuning your RAM speed or overclocking the CPU just a little bit more, get the Gaming K7 instead, because that gives you more capability. Okay, so this is overclocked 8 core, 16 thread with a little bit of a voltage bump. Is there anything else we want to test before we jump into 2+2 configuration, benchmarking, and stuff like that? Just let me know. We might as well run Cinebench while you guys are watching, and I'm waiting. So that's loading right now. Okay. So, and if you remember too, when I did my old GPU test, I hit 97 frames. So if I run that again with a higher clock, it should bump that as well. So let's run this, and let's hope now that we don't burn out the computer, because I, again, was a little bit light on the voltage. Alright, so that's pushing it out really fast. And I've run Cinebench several times again, and that branch prediction works, and it does continually get a little bit faster. After about 3 passes, it it evens out. It doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, guys, that was quick. So we went up to 1590, which is awesome. If I go overclock even more and go to like 4.1 again, I should be able to break 1700 no problem. Let's do single core. Actually, you know, that was a stupid thing because single core is so damn slow on this test. So I'll probably just close the app. So looks like you guys are good on 8 core. We can go back to 8 core high frequency test later. And after we're done with that, we can see what kind of game performance we get. I still promise somebody I'll be running Crysis 3 with everything pretty much maxed out, just to see how well it fills it. So let's close this. Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the default profile, which, let's see. Let's go to 2. Hit discard. Reset. Okay, so the next step we're going to do, what RAM I am using, I wish I had it quickly handy. It's the Corsair LPX 32 gig kit. It's 2 by 16 gigs, CAS 16, I believe, and it's 2666 megahertz speed. So not the fastest RAM out there, but it's perfectly stable. I can just turn on XMP and I boot at 2667, no problem. I've had 0 issues with the RAM, and I'd rather have it just work than deal with the nonsense of trying to overclock and having the computer crash during post. Cool, so I did not have to reboot because Ryzen already owns the motherboard right now. I was able to go back to stock clocks. So I am not going to disable 4 cores in Ryzen Master. I'm going to go into the BIOS to do it, because if I disable 4 cores in Ryzen Master, it goes into a 4+0 configuration versus 2+2. So we're going to go into the BIOS and do 2+2. Let's see. So my 1700 and 1700X can achieve greater or even performance as the 1800. So the nature behind ASICs, or like chips themselves, they're very performance dependent on leakage. The more leakage you have, the more overclock it can tolerate with higher cooling capability. So the 1800X is still the ultimate. If you want just the highest possible frequency and frame rate chance, you want an 1800X because the ceiling is higher. But if you're not pushing those extremes and you can't take advantage of that die's characteristics, or if you run a more mild overclock, a tighter ASIC which produce less leakage, it should have comparable or slightly better performance as long as the thermals are okay. Honestly, they're all so close that I don't really think one will always perform better than the other at the same frequency. I went with the 1700X because for $100 savings, I got this. Well, here's the thing. So if you're buying a graphics card, this is a CPU cooler, by the way, it's $50, and that's all I need to overclock 4.1 and maintain safe temperatures. So I saved $100 on the CPU. Now, if I got the 1800X, I would have had to buy a CPU cooler anyway, so that's still $550 versus $450. The $100 difference in price, I had to buy a graphics card as well. And if you want real performance benefits, the 1800X is the fastest chip if money's no object, but I would much rather spend an extra $100 on my graphics card, which I did. Instead of being stuck with the GTX 1060, I got a 1070 because I bought a 1700X. So just think about your budget and make sure that you get the performance that you want, you know, as a whole package. It's one thing to just say, oh, I'll just get a better video card later, but just think of all of those things as a whole and not just the ultimate in one specific area, which is again why I went with 32 gigs of slightly slower RAM as opposed to 16 gigs of just ridiculously fast RAM. I need the 32 for virtual machines. So for anyone who's just tuning in now, we are going to start testing a Ryzen 5 configuration. So what that means is I'm going to go to advanced frequency settings. Oh, geez, look at that. Sorry for not switching over. So we're going to go into advanced frequency settings, Advanced CPU core settings. Virtualization is still enabled. Simultaneous multi-threading is still enabled. But we're going to do down core control. And I'm going to go into a 2+2 CCX cluster configuration. So with that being said, this is going to perform like a Ryzen 5 1600X as long as I match the frequency. Now, if I overclock to 4 gigahertz, it should be faster. If I overclock to 3.6, that's great. You know, it'll match the stock clock speed. So with that being said, let's reboot. And now we are going to run this thing with 2+2. So I did not overclock to 4.1. Yeah, so if you just put 4,000 and it doesn't work, that your voltage is too low. So you have the Asus 370 Prime. Does that? I'm trying to think what I can suggest to play it safe. Does it have two BIOSes? Like, can you switch? Is there a physical switch on it to go from BIOS 1 to 2 or BIOS A to B or whatever it is? Because that'll be important. And these chips are pretty tolerable of voltage, but I just wouldn't do it long term. Yeah, see, if you have the Prime 370 Pro, I would look to see if you have dual BIOS, because worst case scenario, if you brick your machine, which you can't really brick it from overclocking, it's just going to crash. And if you reboot, the motherboard will take back over the Ryzen master overclock, and you'll be back at stock frequencies. That's the worst that'll happen, unless you do something stupid like push 5 gigahertz with 1.6 volts and expect it to work, because it's not. Okay, guys, so let's do Task Manager and see what it looks like. There we go. Let's move this over. Okay. So in Task Manager, we now have a 2+2 configuration. So this is 4 cores, 8 threads, and I'm using both CCX clusters. This is probably, I think one other company did this kind of testing. They found a way to do it. I don't know if they had the same motherboard or another one that has that feature. But we are now running at stock frequencies, which is going to be equivalent more to, I think, a Ryzen 5 1500. So let's run CPU-Z and do some benchmarking with 4 cores, 2+2. I don't think any boards are going to come with Thunderbolt 3 because Intel owns they own that interface, and they charge a shit ton of money if other people want to use it. But if you have a particular need for Thunderbolt 3, then you might need to go with an Intel board. I have a Thunderbolt port on my workstation. The only thing I found that could utilize it was external SSD enclosures if I want ridiculous speed. But the SSDs I buy can use USB-C or USB 3.0 just fine. So you're at 4 at 1.35. Yeah, 1.35 at 4 gigahertz is usually pretty good. And binning has to do with it as well. So let's talk about a couple of those things real quick. You can get lucky with a processor, and you can get a 1700X that might overclock better than an 1800X. Even though that shouldn't happen, there is a little bit of a crossover point. When you get really lucky, it seems that was it Jun663? Seems like you got lucky with your 1700X because that's great voltage for that overclock. I've hit 4.15 on all 8 cores with numerous tests on a $50 air cooler, and it hasn't crashed. So I got really lucky as well. And that's not all motherboard specific. You can overclock with different boards. Now to get on your second topic, the RAM issue, ASRock seems to have some amazing features on some of their boards, but I know they're still ironing out RAM problems right now. As is Asus. I mean, even Gigabyte. Gigabyte is the best launch board brand, by the way, for RAM. If you just want to plug in RAM and turn on XMP and boot, your best chance of having that successful is on a Gigabyte board right now. And they keep adding more RAM to the QVL list or qualified vendor list. I don't want to say daily, but every few days. So let's bench this thing. Enough of me talking, right? So here we go. We are using, it's interesting that the process monitor isn't showing much of a change there. But we're still right around 2000, and there you go. There's 87. So we could always test 4 plus 0 versus 2 plus 2 to see how that affects synthetic bench. And let's load Cinebench. This is stock clock, by the way, guys. So don't, we can obviously push it another 600 megahertz, but this again is equivalent to what you're going to get from a Ryzen 5 1600, not the X. Alright, Cinebench. I'm just going to do the multi-core because a single core just takes way too long. So these are all good questions, guys. Please, again, keep going if you're curious about anything else. I have to take a sip because I'm recovering from a cold. So while this is running, we'll keep this going. Cool. And I am back to 2666 RAM now. I bumped it back up when I was in the BIOS. So we got a score. Let's see if it saved it. Ryzen 7. That's funny how it's showing that. Our prior test was like just over 1500 with all 8 cores. So we cut it in half. So in theory, it should be about 75 to 8000, depending on how well it's overclocking itself. That's funny. Same as the 3770K at 4.6. So yeah, it likes CPU-Z. Wow, that was extremely low. Let's try branch prediction, guys, and run this one more time. So that, I don't know if that makes it, the performance issue is more apparent, because now that it's 2 plus 2, it's relying on the interconnect more for the CCX cluster versus a 4.0. If you double that, that's only 12. Let's see, that's right about 1300. So we're missing it by about 100 points to 150 points compared to just running it 8 core at stock frequency. So that was 678. We're going to run it one more time back to back because in theory, I should get at least 685 to 690 because of the branch prediction with AMD. And what that means is, hey, a similar instruction set is coming in, or similar set of requests are coming in. I've saved some of those requests. I know how to handle it. So because this one's coming, I know that the next one is going to be this. So it starts figuring it out in advance and staging the memory and the data to save time and reduce latency, etc. So in almost every case, if you do the exact same benchmark a second time right after, it should be faster. Now there's a certain limitation to how much quicker it'll get, but it will improve. So let's see, while that's running, yeah, we're at 2666 right now. Hey Rakat, thanks for tuning in. Please be more specific, just so I know what you're saying with performance. Here we go. 1 point. That made 0 difference. So I don't think this likes to run in 2 plus 2 as much. That's a little on the low side. We can overclock it and try it one more time, but that's about 47% of what it is as an 8 core. Let's see, 2295 and 10. That's a great single core. And to be fair, it seems that CPU-Z likes the performance bias of AMD a little bit more because it doesn't. Single core performance results are different on a lot of different benchmarks because it depends on what instruction set is available. If there's an instruction set that's a little bit more efficient that Intel has and a program supports it, even though on this test I'm getting better performance on AMD, on another test that uses an Intel specific instruction set or something that prefers it, like AVX instruction sets tend to work better on Intel, you're going to see a benchmark swing the other way. So so gaming and streaming, so gaming, I don't think you're going to see much of a difference, but what I'm concerned about is the reliance on a CCX cluster to do a 2 plus 2 configuration and be more dependent on that interconnect, which is that infinity fabric thing that they keep talking about. Until I've had, I mean, we can run it. We can run games and see how much of a difference at stock frequencies it makes on frame rate. So if there's a game you want me to test, let me know. You know, between like CS:GO or Crisis or something like that. Until I see more benchmarks, I'm not a professional benchmarker, guys. I had downloaded a few of these to help you and answer questions, but I didn't spend all this money on games to run this benchmarking stuff. I work a lot, so streaming wise, more cores will always be better. But let me think if I can show you something that will help explain why streaming is kind of a questionable thing. So let's load OBS. And I want to show you something in OBS that helps, that could help mitigate some performance concerns. So let's close this. Nope, I don't want to save. Now I think, yeah, okay. That's why I was checking for an update. So let's skip that for now. Okay, so if I'm doing, you know what, just in case I show my profile information, I'm going to load my settings real quick because I want to show you how we can affect performance on live streams. Output, okay. So here's the output. Now, for the encoder, there's right now I have two different options, and if you had Intel, you'd even have three with an NVIDIA card or an AMD graphics card. Multi-threaded was 8800 on the 4-core. So yeah, sorry, that's probably really small. So 8800 for a 2+2 at stock frequency. So on streaming, if I have a GTX graphics card, it has a chip inside called NVENC, or NVIDIA encoder, NVENC. And that is a hardware dedicated chip that allows me to convert all of that pixels into a live stream and send it to YouTube or Twitch, stuff like that. It doesn't really impact CPU performance at all, and it won't affect frame rate performance because even though the graphics card is doing it, it's a dedicated chip on the card just for encoding. It has nothing to do with game performance. Now, if you're worried about frame drops, you technically would want to use something like NVENC or AMD, and I'm going to get made fun of here because I'm drawing a blank. Again, I'm not feeling well. AMD has their own hardware decoder, and I'm sure someone will add that in the stream if they want. But Intel has QuickSync. That will lower your picture quality a little bit, but you won't have to worry about frame drops. Now, if I do X264, this is where I have more control, and this is where the CPU is doing all the work. So if you wanted to set, I don't know how many people are familiar with basically prioritizing cores or selecting a specific core, but if I'm running X64 and I'm concerned about frame loss, I can assign a game to 6 cores, and I can assign OBS to another 2 if I don't want Windows to management. But on an 8-core, you don't have to worry about that as much. I just hit X264. I can stream at 6,000 bitrate, and it won't really impact. It'll drop the frame rates a little bit, but the picture quality would be insane. And just to show you what the difference with this is, if you go on CPU usage and you go to medium, that's a lot more demanding on your processor. And what it lets you do is have a higher quality video at a lower bit rate. So if you don't have the best internet connection and you want to produce a live stream that kicks ass and shows you playing, but you have 5 megabits of bandwidth, you can drop your bit rate down. And this is something you would want to do on a Ryzen 7, not a Ryzen 5, because it's really going to start impacting frame rates. But now I can drop my bit rate down to 1500 and change the encoder speed to, let's just start with medium or slow, and these are going to make the picture quality excellent without taxing my internet connection and making me lag and not be able to kill anybody. So you just get more flexibility. So hopefully that helps. Keep in mind, it's the Ryzen 5 6-core 12-thread on the 1600s. That's insane performance. It's not going to be a slouch. So in comparison to this, yeah, it'll be a little slower, but you're not going to see terrible performance by today's standards. Alright, so we are running a 2+2 at stock frequencies. I haven't seen any other requests yet. Parag, if you have a specific Linux benchmark you want me to test, let me know. Um, just gaming benchmarks. So that'll be a challenge in our time frame tonight. Shoot me a comment when you can, and I can design, I can run something for you. I do programming. I do a lot of virtual machines, and without getting too far into my, I guess my side activities, I use Kali Linux, if that helps. So stuff like that. All right, so I'm gonna load Steam, and let's see. And while we're waiting, I did download Geekbench. So if you guys want to see a Geekbench run, this is, let me close Steam now. Hey, people must have seen my Steam profile from the last stream. I got friend requests. All right. So here's Geekbench. We're running 2+2 on CCX cluster at stock frequency, so this is going to be a little on the low side compared to what people expect from a Ryzen 7. So you got 1657 at 1657. Oh, so that last one, that is what the chip has a default clock at. It doesn't show what the overclock speed is. So it can't, Cinebench just knows the 1700X is a 3.4, so someone was pushing it at 4 or 4.1, and they just got similar results. So I wouldn't stress too much about that, June. So we are running Geekbench 2+2 at stock. Yeah, it's likely overclocked. I can't imagine it not being overclocked just because of that performance. But this isn't the 1600X equivalent, but I would say this result is going to closely mimic a Ryzen 5 1600, just as far as core utilization goes and speeds, and what you can expect for RAM performance on this kind of motherboard. So while we're waiting on that, user benchmark. Yeah, that's another download, I believe, correct? I can look for that in a moment. I thought I tried downloading it, but I don't know if I pulled it off or not. But we can run that. You want user benchmark just to confirm for a Ryzen 5 1600 equivalent? Because if so, I can do that next. I think this showcases how cool. Yeah, we can do that. This should showcase how good this board is for stability. We've been doing quite a lot of different things. We've disabled cores, we've changed RAM timings, we've overclocked to nearly 4 gigahertz. So I know the CPU has been pretty well, but this motherboard has been really flexible for customizing things and not really running into any problems. Again, not to say it's perfect, but the best thing I've seen, or the worst thing I've seen with this board, is the slow post times, which is not only this board, that's several AMD motherboards right now for AM4. I think the fastest post times you can expect are on MSI. Okay. Well, it depends on the programming workloads you're doing. If you have a compilation or a compiler that's going to just use a single thread, then no. I mean, you can overclock an i5 K series pretty high, and the single core is going to be ridiculous. So that's something to consider. Anything that takes advantage of multi-thread, though, I don't see how it could possibly lose out. I don't see how an i5 could beat a Ryzen 5 in multi-threaded productivity task. Period. I don't even think an i7 is going to be able to keep up with a Ryzen 5 1600 series, to be honest, when it comes to workstation multitasking or productivity. So, oh, that sucks. So you have a Gigabyte G3 and the new F6D beta BIOS bricked it. So if you recall, if you could answer this question, is there Levelone? If you have a switch on your motherboard to switch BIOS versions, let me know, because there's something I read online that might work for you. Sacco, I did not have to change anything to hit 4.1. I just I upped voltage a little bit and I monitored temperatures. It's safe. So what you want to do is research what is a safe voltage, at least that won't instantly burn out your CPU, right? And do the bench. And if it doesn't crash after some load testing in a bench, slowly pull back the voltage until you get a system crash. And then rinse, repeat. And dial the voltage back up until you find something stable. So guys, this is the result. This is comparable to what I would expect from a stock Ryzen 5 1600, not the 1600X. The X will be faster than this. This is 3.4 gigahertz, and as you can see here, 4 cores, 4 threads. For those who can't see the text, that's 3954 single core, multi-core of 12,279. Yeah, I would not do beta BIOSes in general. Actually, so I have to show you something because this frustrated me a little bit. Okay. All right, so this is the motherboard that we're benchmarking right now, right? The Gaming 5. It's an excellent board, and one of the reasons why I bought it, if you scroll down, this stuff's pretty cool, by the way, the Fusion app. We can show you that in a minute. When I scrolled down, I got all excited because I do a lot of streaming, and I like XSplit for its stability. OBS is great because it's open source, but look at this, XSplit, and it says somewhere, free 1-year XSplit Gamecaster and Broadcaster license. Well, when I ran it and installed it, I never got the free one for the last 2 weeks, and it turns out no one did, because they had something broken, or not broken, but misconfigured in the BIOS OEM strings. So when you look at support for this, and I click on BIOS, F5D, and they've changed it. They pulled the F5C BIOS because that was a beta with just DDR. F5D included the same DDR BIOS check, but it says enable XSplit Broadcaster Gamecaster 12-month license. When they did that, they changed the OEM string, and I wish I could show you what that string looks like without, let me see if I can extract part of it, because I don't want to give away what the string is supposed to look like to have people pirate this. So give me a second and I'll pull it up. But basically what happens was there is a system string that tells Windows what the motherboard model is, and that was broken. And when that happens, it doesn't know that you have a promotional motherboard, so it can't give you, it won't activate the 12 months free. Oh, look, and they changed it so it's all scrambled now. So I can't even show you the string, but basically here's this mess. When it's not encrypted, you can see it in plain text, no problem. Basically, this BIOS changed that string, so now it knows it's a Gigabyte Gaming 5, and then all of a sudden XSplit, the next time I launched it, prompted me to say, hey, you have 12 months, thanks for choosing Gigabyte, it's optimized for Gigabyte, etc. One downside of that, when you install Windows, when you install Office, it checks your motherboard string, and that's how it knows that it's that computer. So if anyone's ever changed a motherboard, you'll know that if you just moved a hard drive onto a new motherboard that's compatible and it somehow boots fine, all of a sudden half of your programs are deactivated, or you have to reactivate them because you've changed some parts, a hardware change. That one string triggers that. So my Office installation broke and I had to reactivate it because of the string. So if you're watching this video and you haven't bought this board yet and you're going to, do the BIOS flash first, boot into the BIOS, copy it to a flash drive from another computer, flash it, fix the string, and then install all your software. That way you don't have to deal with reactivating stuff, because there's limits on how often you can reactivate software. So that's just a really stupid thing that they can't really help now, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place, and that's the repercussions from it. So that's that. All right. Okay, cool. So I'm on standby. Oh, I have to download the other benchmarking program, User Benchmark. I have it. I think if I run it, it just launches, right? Okay. So we're going to do... Apparently we're going to do them all. You can't change it. So we're going to run it. Hello again, Geek Dad. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to try to fix this chat issue. I didn't know it was transparent. There we go. Alright, so this is running for a minute. Ask some questions, guys, if you want while we're waiting. Right now we're running a Ryzen 5 1600 equivalent with a 2+2 configuration at stock frequencies, 3.4. So these benchmarks will reflect that. If you have any questions while this is running, just let me know and we'll go to that next. The biggest gain from an X370 to a B350. Okay, so it depends what your concerns are. So in theory, if your only concern is overclocking, everyone thought that the X370 was the overclocking board chipset to get if you want to do any significant overclocking, because the VRM quantities are between 8 and 16. 16 for the crosshair, and I think 8 is down to like the Biostar boards and stuff like that. Although they have some 12-phase ones. Gigabyte's only 10. So there's a lot of people with B350 boards that are still getting 4 gigahertz, 4.1 gigahertz, no problem. So that doesn't seem to be the limitation. The chip consumes 65 to 95 watts stock, or that's the TDP rating. It consumes a little bit more when it's at load, but there doesn't require a ton of VRM power to do that. Now, more VRMs mean lower temps. So in theory, under extreme testing or extreme overclocking, you still want a X370 chipset for the reliability and stability point. I do a lot of workstation level stuff and virtual machines and a lot of tests that are very CPU intensive. I got the X370 because of the stability, and I've always trusted Gigabyte, especially with their ultra durable line. Their one big limitation with B350, I'm sure people are saying this stuff, you cannot run Crossfire on a B350. If you want to run 2 NVIDIA graphics cards, I can't move the 3D render over, sorry guys. If you want to run 2 NVIDIA graphics cards, you have to get an X370. If you're running 2 AMD graphics cards in Crossfire, you can still do a B350. Let's see. I thought I missed something else. Oh, and the other thing with X370 versus B350, even though the capability is similar, here we go. Here's your results coming. Let's blow this up. So even though the results or the performance capability should be similar, you don't get the same features. So if you're concerned with USB ports, if you're concerned with NVMe memory or a U2 connector for those really expensive Intel solid state drives, BCLK overclock capability, stuff like that, you're not going to get that on a B2 or B350 chipset. You have to get an X370 for additional features. This particular motherboard has 2 network interface cards, a killer network and an Intel. You're not going to get that on a B350. So again, look at the whole feature set and not just can I overclock just as high or not. Okay, B350 at 4.4 on air. That's the highest overclock I've seen on a Ryzen chip. So I'd be curious how you pulled that off and what voltage. I'm assuming you have an 1800X and you're running some high voltage. That's an excellent overclock either way. Overclock your power supply unit to run a new GPU. I would not modify the power supply if it's not rated to handle your graphics card. I would stick to power supplies are cheap and these don't consume a lot of power. You can get a 600 watt bronze power supply for about $40, and that's much safer than modifying an aftermarket or modifying one. FX 8350. Okay. Yeah, overclocking in PSU is a bad idea. Yeah, Ryzen FX 8350 overclocks much higher. It has to do with the manufacturing process. They're manufactured with a larger die. They're not 14 nanometer like Ryzen, so they can typically get higher overclocks with more voltage and more heat. So heat has been an issue as these processes get smaller and the dies shrink. The heat's not so much a problem. It comes down to all right, thanks, Patrick. You're right. Yeah, it's not so much the heat issue now. It becomes a stability issue. So that's the only reason why you run into limitations there. So for whoever asked me about the user benchmark, again, this was running 4 cores, 8 threads at a stock frequency. Hopefully that answers your concern there. If you guys have other benchmarks or things you want me to test, let me know. Let's see, small overclock. Yeah, the 920 was a great chip back in the day, but that 2600K was such a beast. I mean, that thing worked well for years. It still works well now for a lot of people. If you can hit 5 gigahertz or 4.5, no problem. I think that covers all the questions. So it's a little quiet right now. I think I'm going to start, unless you guys need to see other benchmarks in 2+2 configuration, I was going to start loading up some game benchmarks. We can go back to 8 core and start overclocking again and see how it runs some high detail games. So if you guys want to see anything else in the meantime before I change this, let me know. Okay, let's see. All right, Intel. Okay, there we go. CPU-Z just loaded. We're going to do one more bench. For those just watching, this is the a Ryzen 7. It's a 1700X that has half the cores disabled. It's in 2+2 at 3.4 gigahertz. So we're just going to do a CPU-Z test again. And we got 1970 on a single core and 8800 on a multi-thread, and that's with Chrome running. So let's see. We got a lot of last minute info here. Okay, so Optane, I mean, if you want really high speed, expensive memory, you would use Optane. It can be used as SSD. You can use it as RAM cache. So it depends what your requirements are. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So you guys are talking about some pretty crazy overclocks on Intel chips. If you're only gaming and you're only concerned with gaming, with those kind of overclocks, even though this is an amazing CPU, you don't need to upgrade to get more frame rates right now. You're not going to see much of a difference, and as sure as some of you know, in some cases your frame rates will actually drop with this Ryzen 7, at least until the platform matures. So with that being said, I would stick with the Intels and focus more on graphics card upgrades. I think that is going to be a bigger impact on your overall experience. Now, if you're looking for better performance on streaming, let's say you like to run Chrome, listen to music, you have Slack open like I do, you have your game, you want to live stream it, etc., then the Ryzen chip or a 6-core Intel chip or better will be an improvement for you. Yeah, you could cache games on it, harsh. I mean, you can just install the game on it. So the whole thing is running like a normal solid-state drive. All right, so event frequency. For those just tuning in, we are in the Gigabyte BIOS right now. I'm going to click on advanced frequency settings, advanced CPU core settings, and I'm going to go all the way down to down core control. Now this awesome feature that I just found out about will let you benchmark a Ryzen chip any way you want. So let's go to auto, and when I set to auto, it's full tilt 4+4. Down here at the bottom you can do 3+3, which the Ryzen Master also supports. So we're going to go to auto and make sure that I'm still at the right RAM speed, and I am. So we're back to 8 cores, guys, and it's likely going to restart one more time. because I'm going to use Ryzen to overclock a little bit, and we're going to run Crysis 3, and we're going to max out every single setting on Crysis 3. Yes, Red Storm Clouds, I am. Sorry if you missed a bunch. Thanks for tuning in. So we've kind of covered a few things. We did the Ryzen 5 1600 configuration where we did 2+2 at 3.4 gigahertz. We've done a lot of benchmarks. We've looked at the BIOS. Before I get into the game, actually, I don't want to forget this one thing. I mentioned this in the very beginning, so there weren't as many people watching. But I actually have a webcam inside this desktop to show off the RGB lighting. Now, I'm not a big RGB guy, but I do want to show you some cool software that Gigabyte gives you. So check this out. That's inside the case. How about that? Okay. So thank you guys. I'm getting a couple notifications that people are subscribing, so I really appreciate it. Again, it's not really a channel that's designed to make money or anything. I just like to talk about nerdy stuff. So if you're watching, that's great. And if you need something specific answered, let me know. Can you disable DIMMs? No, I would just say just unplug the RAM you want disabled. Let's see. Okay. So while I have the cam light or the light cam installed and running, let's load a couple things here. Because I want to show you a couple things with Gigabyte software. Now, as you know, Gigabyte software is not as fine-tuned as some other companies. For example, look at this. See, even now it's taking a second to move around. Here we go. Like the OSD, the 3D OSD, does not really work like at all. I haven't gotten it to work on a single game, even if I manually assign games to launch with it. It didn't do anything. Let's see, RGB Fusion. I installed all these, by the way, not because I'm stupid, but because I was testing every single thing that Gigabyte offers for my review. Most of that will be gone by tomorrow. So not for you. It depends on what you're using it for. If you have a specific use case that's not just gaming, let me know, and then I can answer. Alright guys, so here's the RGB Fusion app. Now there's advanced where I can change zones as well, but one thing I want to show you that's cool, you can see the camera on the bottom right corner of your screen, and the second I click to change colors, you're going to see that it changed colors. I don't have to wait. I can go to color cycle, it'll start doing that for me, which is cool. Now that's a very poor picture because the camera's just jammed in the it's in the front of the case. I actually have one of the DVD drives removed so I can have a camera angled in there. I'm using a Thor case, so luckily I have a lot of space. But it's nice that this responds as fast as it does. And on this note, here's a stupid tip. I've crashed this motherboard a few times because I've done some high-end overclocking. And when that happens, the board resets itself. When it resets itself, it changes back to stock red. So with that being said, if you want to have a quick indication if your motherboard's ever reset itself, change it to any other color but stock red. And if you ever, like I run lime green, for example, I can't even see it. I just see it reflecting off the inside of my desk. But if I see that color on the bottom left turn red, I know my motherboard reset itself. I've run into it a couple times, and I think that has to do with being more aggressive with RAM or overclocking. But that's a little tip. For Linux users, someone asked me about Linux before. This software obviously won't work on Linux, but RGB Fusion is in the BIOS. So you can change everything with exception of, let's see, I know Intelligent doesn't work and the music doesn't work. So you can't have it pulse to music, obviously. It has to tie into a Windows driver. You know, Intelligent might work, but I haven't seen that in the BIOS before. So land speed, this is kind of getting crazy now. So if you could say it, no connection. So did that change color already? So it's green. So here's what's, oh, so it didn't work. Because I have a 1 gig connection right now, so it should be orange. So if I go to red, I want to see if it does it. So that doesn't really work that well because I'm hardwired with a 1 gig, and just so people don't think I'm crazy, let's click on the network. And there we go. So I'm not crazy. It's running at 1 gig. It just software doesn't work. So this is it's a little buggy, but cool features either way. RGB, lots of modes. You can flash it and have a seizure. Do whatever color you want. And look at that. It's seizuring on the corner there. That's cool. So let's go back to static. Change it to green, and I'm going to close this out. One thing that I didn't cover this before that not a lot of people do. And I'm going to turn off the color cam. Real quick, not for you, streaming and video editing, just in case you have to drop off soon. If you're doing video editing, then yes, a 4-core CPU compared to a 6 with hyper-threading is going, or multi-threading, simultaneous threading, will be an improvement for you. You should notice it, especially if you use the CPU for rendering. Okay, so I don't want to click these because it likes to jack up my fan profile. This does work really well if you don't feel like changing the output speeds of all your fan controllers inside. Smart Fan 5, I love this feature, and here's why. I could choose every single fan that I have connected. Now, I've already assigned the location of every fan to these ports. I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I said it's going to System 3. Now, if I click this little blue dot, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with the video review I have coming out, but so this is where I say, okay, fan 3 is on the bottom, or is it on the side, or whatever. So I can tell it where it is, and then on the right-hand side here, I can select what temperature probe I want to refer to when I adjust my fan profile. So right now, the PCI EX16, basically my full-size PCI slot underneath the graphics card, which is right next to your NVMe memory, is seeing 36 degrees centigrade. So what that means is if that spot on the motherboard is at 36, this is where I want it on my fan profile. Now if I boost this and hit apply, and I'll select all, let's apply it to all. Now you'll see this come up because it's going to provide more air on that area of the case to help cool that chipset down. This motherboard comes with a thermistor, or 2 thermistors, which means I actually have outputs on the motherboard for external temperature sensors. And I believe my front fan, I don't know if I assigned it. I don't think I needed to, but okay, so if you see where it says EC Temp 1, it's where my mouse is going in a circle. That's where it's plugged into, but I have that sensor on the front of the case where the hard drives are, and that will help cool off my hard drives. If my hard drives, which right now, it shows 45 degrees centigrade, and that's jammed in between 2 4 terabyte Western Digital black drives that are in RAID, so they work pretty hard. If I wanted more air on that, I can now say, okay, reference this instead, go down, and this should go up. And let's give it a sec here, and there it is. So now my fan is spinning faster up front to cool off my hard drives. Yeah, June, it depends on what your use cases are. If you're purely a competitive CS:GO player and you don't run anything else on the computer, then I mean, to be honest, we want to get an Intel, just because the frame lag is dependent, or your input lag is dependent on frame time. So faster frames mean you have the advantage on a headshot, if you will. But in most scenarios, you're right. I mean, I multitask. I don't put my computer in game mode and shut down everything just because I want 97 frames per second instead of 90. But, a lot of reviewers out there are showing fairly objective benchmarks just because there is a difference. I think it's unfair to come to a specific conclusion because of a 7% or 10% frame difference to say it's not a good gaming chip, because when you look at what it's being compared to, it's excellent. This is actually one of my favorite features for random software. It's called USB DAC up. And what that does is, I don't know if anyone's ever done streaming before with a long cable going to a webcam or some kind of device, like if you use the HTC Vive or some virtual reality headset that requires USB, you can do what's called DAC up. And what that means is you can add additional voltage to the USB ports. So in an electronic principle, I guess. I'm not the best for terms right now. I'm sorry, it's late. But when a wire is longer, you have more resistance, which means On the other end of the cable, you're not getting the same voltage you started with. There's a little bit of loss. It's that push, which is what the voltage is. So you can push a little bit harder initially. That way, by the time it hits the end where it's going to your webcam or whatever it is, now it's still at 5 volts. And when you initiate a high-powered webcam, it's not going to conk out on you and die. Because I've actually had that happen with an extension cord before. So all you do is bump this up a little bit until you find something stable, and that'll keep your devices working smoothly. Okay, let's see if there's anything else here. We got 28 people watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. If there's anything you want me to click on right here, let me know. Most of the stuff is not good, but if you want a quick rundown, keep one of the BIOS's icons, because both of them show you your BIOS version. The features on top of that are fairly useless, because if you're going to flash your BIOS, you want to do it pre-boot. And if you want to change settings in the BIOS, you're going to want to do more than change the numlock status, which is what BIOS setup is. It's really limited. Again, this is a great board. I'm not knocking the board, but don't install every single program it comes with. So I can change the numlock in the full screen logo, and then system language. So both of these are good to tell me what BIOS version I'm running. I don't see the point in having both. Yeah, the Ryzen R3 is going to be an incredible value. Here's another useless one. USB blocker. Check this out. Seems like some of these have to be double-clicked. So I can disable certain devices based off the profile of what it is. What's weird to me, if I click vendor specific and hit block, you can't actually choose what vendor it is. It just says vendor specific and block. So I have no idea what that does, and I'd rather not kill my mouse. So again, this is one of those programs I wouldn't really recommend installing. If you want to block something, just unplug it. Look at that, and there's no cancel or OK. So you just have to pray that it doesn't jack anything up. So let's hit close. Let's see. Auto green is Bluetooth management. You have Windows 10 for that. Game boot is boost is just a task killer. Fast boot is I read into this earlier. I had a lot of stuff open, and I clicked on fast boot because I wanted to see what it had for features. And here's what's weird. So when you click on BIOS setup, you would think that a BIOS setting called fastboot would be in BIOS setup. It's not. It's in a separate program you have to install called fastboot. So I don't know why they separated a lot of features that are really just controls of the BIOS anyway. It should have all been in one program, but there it is. You can change your BIOS boot mode. This red block of text right here where it says enter BIOS setup now, it does not prompt you to go into the BIOS. As soon as I click it, it shuts down everything you have, and it says your computer's restarting now, and it goes into the BIOS. So do not click this, or probably honestly don't even install it, because you can do that in BIOS anyway. That's that. Okay, so let's load Ryzen. We've had some people asking questions about gaming. This is stock frequency right now on an 8-core, so we're going to bump it up a little bit. And I'm not going to go crazy with the overclock right now. I mean, we could, if we're not concerned with time. But, see, this is, that's pretty aggressive. So let's bring this down a little. Let's go at 3900 at 1.38. Save. It's going to make me reboot, I imagine. That's weird. So apply is missing. So that's not working too hot. Requires power cycle. So even though we enabled the cores again, because something's jacked up with Ryzen right now, it's still not letting me do it. So let's see if that actually shut it off or not. So we might have just found a bug with the BIOS. Yeah, even though we disabled 4-core and went back to 8, it's still running in 4-core. So we're going to have to restart into the BIOS and see what's going on with that. Yeah, the longer the wire, the more resistance, more loss. Highest voltage I recommend. If you want to keep your computer for, 1.4 is pretty much as high as I would go. If you want to keep your computer for, several years, I would not even push that high all the time, just if you really need it. Okay, so here's where it gets scary, guys, because it's running. Yeah. So we found a bug in the BIOS. It's running in auto right now, but it's not enabling my other cores, so it just disabled half my processor, even though I have it turned back on. So this is going to be fun, because what this means is I have to reset or clear the BIOS. The first thing I'm going to do, this is going to be a little bit of a project, but that's kind of a risk we took. So we're going to unplug the motherboard, boot it back up, and see if it's released that down core control and turned on the other cores. So stand by for just a minute. We're going to shut this off and try that real fast. Yeah, actually, Geek Dad AMD app had 4 cores disabled. It was not the case. I didn't actually apply that yet. It wouldn't let me. So we're going to power cycle anyway. I think a full power cycle will help. It stayed running, and I've seen that have issues with different things before. So we're just going to save this, shut down, and go from there. So give me just a moment. I'm going to switch back to a little standby screen, if you will. And give me just a moment, guys. I'm going to shut it off real quick. Not the stream, of course, but... Alright, so I had the mic muted. So check that out. So it did not like disabling cores. So even though that's a really cool feature, apparently it's still pretty buggy. We're going to give that a second. Learning curves, right? And if this is all jacked up, the Gigabyte... can you hear me? Yeah, it looks like it's coming through. If it's all jacked up, then we will switch to the other BIOS. Let me know if you guys can hear me now, because it shows sound is going through. Okay, thanks, guys. So while this has been happening, this computer has power cycled. Yeah, it is. This computer has power cycled like 4 times now since that crash. And I bet you... So... The good news is it's still green, so I didn't reset the whole BIOS, even though it power cycled several times. I'm really hoping that all the cores work now, otherwise we are going to change BIOS modes here. Alright, so it's booting up, that's good. You know, Ryzen has some growing pains, but I'm happy with it. I love the motherboards that are out with it right now. Aside from some bugs, the features are good, it just has to work well. So let's just pray. Yay, look at that. So several power cycles fixed it. And we're still running at 3.4. So we're back to normal. So I guess when you enable cores, don't just restart while it's running. You're going to want to shut the whole thing down, and that'll release the core lock again, allowing you to go back up to 8. So if anyone's using a Gigabyte board to test 4 cores, that is the workaround. Alright, so it shows all of them running again. Let's go to this. I have no more warning. We're still at the right RAM. It might have to restart one more time because we just we are now taking control over from the motherboard. And no, it didn't. That's awesome. I think the biggest time I've seen restarts happen is when I've used Ryzen Master to change the RAM, because you can't really do that while it's running, but at least the core control doesn't matter. Okay, guys, so I'm going to change... What's up, Dustin? I'm going to change primary monitors real quick, because if I launch this game, with the way it's set up right now, you're not going to see it. So we're going to launch Crysis 3 full screen. We're going to do some streaming here in a minute, and we'll see what you guys think and if you have questions. Ryzen Master is free online. Just Google search Ryzen Master and it'll take you to the AMD webpage and you can download it. All right. Okay, so let's load Crysis. Oh, something happened. Okay. Sent here. Yeah, I don't know. There was some miscommunication with RAM speed issues. Here's the thing. The launch was rushed. So there was a lot of growing pains, and you saw a lot of Gigabyte boards, I think, because that was one of the few that produced the quantity necessary, but also because it happened to support stock speed. Like, it supported XMP speeds of 3200. The way the Ryzen multiplier or clock multiplier works for RAM speeds, it seems like you want to get 3200 kit speed kits or 3000 kits, but you don't really get more than 3000. So I haven't looked into this to kind of provide a comprehensive list, but if you have a choice on RAM, Samsung B stock, I think it's called, or like Samsung RAM tends to hit higher speeds. And even though, so real quick on that, Geek Dad, the QVLs support RAM, show RAM that works. It will post, but it doesn't mean it posts at the overclocked rating of XMP, etc. So keep that in mind. You can run 4,000 megahertz RAM in it, but it's probably still going to run 2133 at stock speeds. Yeah, G-Skill is really good. If you look at the manufacturer, and the QVL lists on the Gigabyte site show you if it's Hynix or Samsung, etc. I use Corsair, and I have the LPX series 32 gig kit that's only 2666. That uses Hynix RAM, and I'm running XMP 2666 no problem. So it's worked really well for me. Let's see. Yeah, 3200 XMP. It depends on the motherboard you get. If you have, if you haven't had any problems, or you get a good board, it shouldn't be an issue. I'm running it, a decent speed with XMP. But a lot of the BIOSes or motherboards have dual BIOS, so you can always reboot into the right BIOS. If you crash one, just boot into the other one and flash it. Alright, so I'm changing primary screens now. Sorry it took a second. I get distracted when I talk. I'm Italian, so. Alright guys, so Crysis 3. So unfortunately, now that I'm hearing my RAID drive spin up, this is not running on an SSD, it's running on a 4 terabyte dual Western Digital hard drive setup in RAID. So it might take a second to launch the game initially, but once that's all cached, it shouldn't affect frame rates too much. Won't go over 2166. Yeah, June, you're using the ASRock board. Yep, okay. Yeah, so it'll work. You know what? I realized that's probably loud. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Let me know if you need me to change the sound again, if it's too loud or too quiet. So I can't hear any sound on the game the way I'm routing it, so you guys can. So if I'm even worse than normal, that's why. I'm not the best at first-person shooters on a mouse. I play more on a Xbox for like Destiny and stuff, but I'm working on it. So I launched this the other day. If it's still louder, I'm going to turn that down a little bit more. So everything is maxed out, and I can load the graphics settings once we're in game. I just figured I'd get this started as soon as possible. So just to give you a quick rundown of the specs, this is a Ryzen 7 1700X. We're running it at 3.9 gigahertz at 1.39 volts, 32 gigs of RAM, CAS 16 at 2666 speeds. and it's a GTX 1070 graphics card. It's actually it's this guy right here. It's the super clocked. It's not the For the Win edition. It's nothing insane. It's probably one of the least expensive 1070 cards you can buy. It's only about $380. So there's that. Let me see if I can show you the graphics real quick. So 1920 1080. As far as I know, that's as high as it goes. And then let's go to advanced graphics, and everything is maxed out right now, including filtering. So let's see. I'll turn it down more. Let me filter this for you guys. Hang on one sec here. There we go. Okay, so I just turned down the audio. No, it could run at 3.9 at 1.35 volts. It may crash. Turn off blur. Got it. It may crash, but it depends on the chip. A lot of chips overclock better than others, even if it's the same processor. i7s are the same way, and Intel has a much more mature fabrication process on their current chips right now because it's so similar to the 6000 series. So they typically have very similar performance. So let's see. I don't think there's a native way to show frame rates unless you hit. I know there's a console button I can hit where it does like a screen cap. Let me see if I can. Yeah, it doesn't save it. Hang on one sec here. If you guys know the trick, otherwise I'm going to find out real fast. Let's see if we can show FPS while we're doing it. Yeah, 1700 at 3.8 for 1.3 volts is awesome. That's a pretty good voltage. That means your processor's pretty good, and that's going to run pretty cool too. Okay, guys, so let me get out of the way first so I don't die, right? Title, and I think I just found it. Oh, come on. So that's not what I want. Hard display. That's weird. So I am not happy with not seeing frame rates right now. I probably should have put on some other program that's showing it in real time. Let's see if you guys are suggesting stuff. Yeah, that's what I thought I typed. I don't know why I didn't do it. Or maybe I did something stupid. Info. Yeah, that's what we did. Restricted mode. Something to do with... I wonder if it has something to do with that OSD crap that Gigabyte was doing. Yeah. So that won't work either. Well, we'll run it for a second just so you can, I guess, see the gameplay. And again, this is I gotta get line of sight. This is still going to be pretty visibly smooth. Oh, I'm going to be terrible at this, guys. Wow, that was pretty generous. So yeah, it's running with everything maxed out right now, and I'm not noticing any stutter whatsoever. And I'm not running an insane overclock. It's 3.9 gigahertz, so I feel like most Ryzen 7s will hit that, and the Ryzen 5 1600X pretty much does that stock. Trying to think what else I'm missing, and I think the Ryzen 1600 and even the 1500s will overclock pretty high as well. I'm not really too concerned about it. So with that being said, this is Crisis. If you guys want to see anything else specifically, just let me know, and we'll go through that for sure. I have no clue if I'm supposed to be doing something here. I'm sure it's playing some audio telling me what to do. Yep. Alright, so yeah, it's a GTX 1070 EVGA, and I didn't overclock that either. That's completely stock right now. It's the 378.78 driver. So 3.7 at 1.175 is awesome. That's really good. Hearthstone. That's free, I believe, right? I have not played, here we go, let's start really pushing it now, right? So it's pretty smooth. Let's run. Again, I'm not seeing any significant frame drops or stutter, and I have everything maxed out, and I think I even, let's start just shooting people. I'm gonna just be really aggressive. I don't care if I die. So Battlefield 1 as well. You know, I'd love to. This is the downside. I haven't purchased a lot of new games recently, so I don't have Battlefield 1. The Battlefield game I have is much older. I think it's only Battlefield 3 or something like that. So yeah, I can pull up a couple games. I mean, I have some free games. I have Hawken, CSGO, stuff like that. I have Civ 5, which can run on an Intel graphics card. Multiple YouTube videos. Yeah, I mean, the game, as you can see, it runs smoothly. So let's get out of this and do some other stuff. Yeah, multiple. So here's what's cool. I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to run 2 virtual machines. I'm going to run Linux and Ubuntu and have a web page in each of those playing YouTube. And then we're going to run several Chrome tabs playing videos as well. So the hard part is, guys, is fitting all of that into, let's minimize this and load a second instance of Chrome. YouTube. Okay. I'm going to load VMware. And don't mind if some of these videos are childish. My 4-year-old son likes to watch videos too. So we're going to power up. Yeah, that's fine. We're going to power up Kali Linux and Ubuntu. See what I'm missing. Yeah, minimum frame rates are really good. They don't get the same peaks as some of the Intel card CPUs, but they also tend to stay within a few frames the whole time. All right, so I created this VM just a little while ago, so it's not really up to date. Hopefully it will run no problem. Kali Linux is fun. If anyone out there wants to be a hacker and do some of the cool stuff you see in Mr. Robot or whatever, that's the OS you want to play with. Weaker Than Linux is a cool live image. You got your first blue screen of death. That sucks. Okay, so I'm going to try, let's see if I can separate this. I could just do a separate instance, which I just did. There we go. Okay, YouTube. So this is going to be interesting. For anyone who's just tuning in now, we're going to have 2 different virtual machines running YouTube and Chrome running 2 more YouTube videos just to start with. I'm going to see how well. Let's find a long video. Is this really an hour and a half? Okay. So that's good. Let's do that one. I don't know if it'll let me copy out because I don't have VMware System Tools installed, but we'll see. Do I have Tomb Raider? I can check. I don't know. Oh, wow. That worked on right off the bat. Okay. Oops. So that's running. This virtual machine is running. So I have 2 VMs. Those are consuming about 6 gigs total RAM right now, just for how I have it pre-configured. Now, the way VMware works, when I show up Task Viewer or Task Manager, it is not going to automatically eat all of that RAM. So apparently right now it's... Alright, so I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. It allocates it, but if Windows, the host, needs more than what's available, it can pull it from VMware. It's just doing this from a performance standpoint. But 7 gigs is being used. The CPU resources are really not. We're at 12% with 2 VMs running. Let's load that video again. What did I just do? Let's see. I don't want Firefox. There we go. I mean, let's run all these at, yeah, so that's 1080p. Here's what's going to be badass about Ryzen. Yeah, I'm going to show CPU load. It's here. I just have to keep unburying it. So I have 2 VMs running YouTube at 1080p, I think. Nope. Let's bump that up to 1080p. Luckily, I have a decent internet connection right now, so that's helpful. Let's bump this to 1080p. Okay, so I have 4 1080p streams happening right now. I'm at 30 or yeah, 29 to 35% CPU utilization with 4 1080p streams playing on YouTube. 2 of those are happening in virtual machines right now. And just for shits, we are going to do an update. So let's query the servers to start patching that and go back to here. So, I mean, it's like, as you can tell, yeah, now start up Counter-Strike. All right, let's play a game. Let me make this work a little harder then and upgrade this OS. That'll take a while. So let me get Steam ready. Firefox didn't like that. Oh, I know, because I just changed it on the repo. So, well, why not? Let's just try it again and see if I can keep it going. Okay, so it's still running 1080. All right, yes. So we're upgrading the OS. We have 4 1080p streams going. I'm going to launch Steam. Hopefully I don't get spammed. CSGO. That's what it was, right? CSGO? Oh, Counter-Strike? Yeah. All right. Now again, I have most of my games on hard drives, not solid states, because I need the solid state performance for my virtual machines, because the stuff I do there is more important. So yeah, CSGO. I was a little slow on there, sorry. So yeah, this is running. I'm going to confirm. I have the screen, just so people don't think I've closed anything. The screen over here is still running an Ubuntu patch. And we are loading Counter-Strike at the same time. Let's see, fix that. It's gonna take a sec. I think my drives went to sleep, so it might take a sec to start up here. Yeah, so we'll give that a moment here. Let me see if I can pull up Task Manager while we wait. Make sure it's still going. 24% utilization. So this is still running. Make sure Kali is still working. Kali's loading. So again, still four streams going. I may have to restart. Oh, okay, it's working. Whoa, that's weird. I hit the stupid Steam thing. Options, video. So that's an issue. I'm going to have to fix that. So because I am running this on a hardware capture device, it didn't really detect it. So I'm in full screen windowed. Okay, so, and thank you for the kind words. So the one nice thing about this is I can actually pull this up pretty quickly. All right, so Counter-Strike Go, 4 1080p streams, 2 VMs, and we're gonna launch a game. Oh, here we go. Here's where I'm gonna look like a noob. Sure. I thought... Am I doing something wrong here, guys? Because you can tell me if I'm an idiot. Have you tried rendering? Yes, I do a lot of rendering. It's faster than Intel. I like using the CPU for rendering. I don't like using... and I clicked the wrong button, guys. I'm sorry. But I don't like using graphics cards for rendering just because the quality is typically a little bit worse. Now, CUDA is different than the NVEC or NVIDIA encoder. So that's not as bad, but I've just always used the CPU. I have more control over the output. I use Adobe Premiere. And I've used Handbrake, but Handbrake doesn't play as nice. Public lobbies. So if you guys can tell me, I feel like they've changed this. I used to be able to just click, you know, browse server or whatever and play. I'll do offline with bots first, I guess. And apparently I'm missing something here. Let's see, have you tried rendering? No. So if I browse community servers and I hit OK, it closes the game. Oh no, it didn't this time. Okay, so let's look at a shit ton of people. 30 for 30. So I can go on one with 27 out of 64 and hope that it fills up. That's not locked, so let's launch that. I'm going to get wrecked, guys, just to let you know. If you got any vibe from how I was doing in Crisis. And again, while I'm waiting here, my CPU utilization is still in the 20s while it's loading this game. I still have all of those videos and updates happening. Here's Ubuntu. Come on, snap over. Ubuntu is running right now. It's updating with that 1080p stream. Kali Linux still running 1080p. This process, I have my Google Chrome running the same video a couple times. Let's load a third. Why not, right? Because as you can tell, it really doesn't. This processor sucks it up. No problem. Oh, sweet. We gotta love cars. Now, I'm hoping I'm not spamming you guys with a ton of audio now that I think about it. So let's turn down all of that. That should help minimize all the noise in the background. So I apologize. Okay. Oh, I crashed it. I shouldn't have left it that long. I'm going to relaunch it. So that might have been me doing something. Okay, cool. So hopefully this next one's a little smoother, and I won't keep going back and forth with all the other programs while this is loading, because I'm sure that had something to do with it. So, and as you can tell, the frame counter is still in the bottom, so we'll leave that up. Play, community servers, players. All right. I'm going to stay in game and hope that it doesn't crash. And if it crashes, maybe it has something to do with all the other things in the background. Even though the utilization isn't as high, it might not like sharing resources. And that can be fixed by setting affinity in Windows. For those who are online who don't know what that is, you can actually choose what core you assign a task to if you start Task Manager in administrator mode. You can say CSGO is only 4 cores. All right, so with 30 people in the server right now, I'm at 100 to all right, now it's ranging from 90 to about, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, that's the fast track, got it. 170. I mean, I'm all over the place. I'm between 100 and 170, which I think is pretty normal when you have a lot of people. This is just comical. So this is obviously a modified server. But the frame rates are still pretty respectable considering what's going on in the background. So if you guys want me to switch to a different server, that's fine too. Again, I just kind of did this to see what the frame rates would be. And we're again 100 to 130. And if I can quickly Alt-Tab to this. So that is, with that game running, I'm still sitting in the 30s. So I have a lot of stuff running. We have 6 1080p streams and a lot of programs open and 2 virtual machines. So I'm running 3 operating systems right now and it's running it fine. But this server is pretty awful, so we're going to look for a different one. 18 out of 41. Let's try that. So again, it's a little quiet on the chat. I'm only showing this right now to show the frames you can expect in a real game. Hey, look at that, I crashed it. So this could be two reasons. Yeah, it's a good processor. Now, I can almost guarantee that I wouldn't have crashed if I wasn't overclocked and I was doing all that. So it handles overclocking really weird. I can benchmark the crap out of it at 4.1, but in very intensive workloads where I'm bouncing tons of stuff in and out, even if I'm not maxing out the CPU, I've crashed it at high overclocks before. And I'm sure other people have hit that if they've done what I just did. That's not normal use. Let's kill that screen just in case there's an issue. So that's not normal use. If I reboot and we're at stock frequencies, I don't mind starting that all up again, and I can almost guarantee I won't ever crash again, but I won't get as high of a frame rate. So, cool. Yeah, I think no one's chatting because they're either on Android or we're all half asleep at this point. But I appreciate the kind words, guys. Hopefully this stream is helpful. I feel bad if those are just tuning in now or only watching me crash the computer and load games and experimenting, but we've covered a lot. So if you're curious about anything that has to do with Ryzen, motherboards, hardware, even if it's slightly irrelevant to this exact stream, that's fine, just let me know. Yeah, I imagine the I/O is intense. I still think that at stock clocks I won't crash it. Alright, so we're back at stock clocks. Let's load. We're going to load this again. Because I'm a jerk and I like making my computer pay. Yeah, it did look good. I hope I didn't jack up my VMs, but these are throwaways anyway. So we'll resume those. We're going to resume these. Chrome's going to freak out. We're going to start them all again. It's still muted. That's still off. That's a short feed, so... Okay. You can hear my dog barking in her sleep right now. Alright, so that's running. If anyone upvoted or watched those posts, I appreciate any kind words. I probably didn't even do anything with this one. But anyway, let's load YouTube again. So I have 3. Let's add one more. Why not? There's 4. Here's Callie. Oops. So all those are running and I'm booting VMs. Yeah, it sucks to be waiting on the motherboard. If I was waiting this long, I'd probably just buy whatever I can get my hands on at this point because I'm just way too impatient. I don't regret. I got really lucky. This is the board I wanted in the first place, and on the West Coast they have Micro Center and Fry's, so I just kind of kept refreshing the web page until I saw one in stock somewhere. I drove about an hour and a half to get it. I should have just done that. Whatever. Nope, I do not care about that. So, cool, trailers. That's got to be 1080, right? Damn ads. Yeah, Mini ITX is going to be awesome, especially because these thermals are pretty damn low. That's only 720. Whatever. I have an idea. I have a video that is long. That's 24 minutes. So let's load Kali again. ASRock's a good board still. I know once they fix the RAM issues, it's going to be awesome. I had some problems with an ASRock board before, so I just stuck with Gigabyte, because the last Gigabyte board I had was for the AM3 socket, and that's when I had the Phenom 970, and that thing was rock solid. I never had a problem. So I have a little bit of loyalty with Gigabyte right now. Although I did just build a Kaby Lake system in my living room for home theater, and even though that was a budget build, that board just blew me away. It's the B250M. Yeah, the 1700 is an upgrade from an i5 if you're doing... I would say yes across the board. Now, if you're only playing games, it's not a huge upgrade, but it's still better. You know, you might get more frames by getting a better video card. So it depends what you're really looking to accomplish. But if you're doing a lot of streaming and you want to do video encoding or whatever, then yeah, I would still upgrade. Okay, so this is running. Kali's running. Let's load Steam again and pray that they don't crash it. And let's load this. So again, you should see slightly higher utilization just because I'm running lower clocks. Let's see. Yeah, that is a long ways away. Yeah, Asus, you know, I feel like some of the less expensive Asus boards have more problems than their high-end boards, although this time the crosshair was a little bit of an issue. So once you figure out the BIOS bricking issue and you flash the BIOS without booting up into Windows first, that's not so bad, and they have been fixing some of the RAM problems. Okay, so I'm putting actually more strain on this than I did before I crashed it. The only difference is I'm running stock clocks in hopes that, yeah, see, so Counter-Strike Go does not like to be put in the background while it launches. I don't think it shares enough resources with it. So I'll leave it as a primary screen, at least until we're in game. As Asus and ASRock used to be the same, but the engineers left Asus. Some engineers left Asus to form ASRock, so they're located close to each other because the engineers are the same. However, I wouldn't say they're the same board. They still use different people. All right, play browse. That's that stupid one again. Okay. I have to leave this as the primary screen. I think because there's so much happening in the background, the second I drop this game, it loses too much I/O and it crashes. But we'll see. So I actually have more videos happening than last time. We have 6 1080p streams, or let's see. Yes, we have 6 1080p streams going, 2 virtual machines, and Counter-Strike Go. Steam is running. Task Manager is running. There's a couple Reddit tabs open because Reddit's awesome. Yeah, Hyundai or Kia. I won't go down that road. Alright, so I'm getting, of course I die because I'm not even looking what I'm doing. Oh, cool. Something I'm going to absolutely suck at. So we're getting between 100, that's about 130 to 160 frames per second. Now this is a really small, stupid map, and I'm not trying to really do much here, but so my temps, I'm a little nervous about backing out at the moment, but at least I can show you that I'm still getting nearly 200 frames a second. While I have 6 1080p streams going and a bunch of virtual machines. Like, I can't jump for crap on this. Oh, you know, I should probably run, huh? Yeah. And it's running totally fine. Yeah. You know, Chrome, the newest version of Chrome, they actually, they changed a lot of the back end of Chrome. So before, what happened was anytime you had Java timers and you suspended Chrome, it would actually still run those, or not suspended, but you switch tabs, those JavaScripts will still be running in the background, and that's why you get terrible battery life and a performance hit on your processor. And I think someone just gave me a tip. Do it on the edges with your knife. Yeah, I'm not going to even know what that means. Sorry. I don't play CSGO. I just downloaded it because I was messing around one day. Oh, that's how you do it, huh? Well, I will do that another time. I'll embarrass myself and not waste your time a different day. But as far as the temps go, I'm going to take a chance here and load Ryzen Master while this is running and hope that it doesn't release the process so much that it crashes again. So let's click this game right away. I might have just crashed it. I don't know. Alright, and as soon as I think Ryzen's open, we're going to switch over to it. Alright, I'm at 61. And if you want to know about the temperature offsets, that really means I'm at 41. The 1700X and 1800X, they have a 20-degree offset, so those numbers aren't accurate. It's just 20 degrees lower. They did that so the fan profiles of the motherboard manufacturers would be a little bit more aggressive and keep it cool. So far so good. Again, this kind of proves what my thought was. If I keep the game active and I'm at stock clocks, without doing any overclocking, this thing is rock solid. So even though it's only 3.4 gigahertz, I'm still getting ridiculous performance. So don't feel that just because you're not at 4 to 5 gigahertz like some of the higher clocks that you can't do what you need to do. Oh my god, what are the odds of being here again? So just something to keep in mind. I've actually left it at stock clocks most of the time just because of the power consumption and heat. I work at home, so that adds up to a more expensive electric bill, and I prefer to just have everything working and not have to restart my computer. Let's see. Oh, cool, an opening. It will, you can set it to, I'm pretty sure there's a default danger zone of between 85 and 95 depending on the board, but it didn't say it on the Gigabyte. I can send a warning at 80 or 90 or 100. So after the offset, that's still kind of low. I wouldn't say low. 80 is pretty high when you do the 20-degree offset, but... Alright, so this game impacted frame rates a little bit. Oh, cool, I have a welcome video. That's cute. Okay, so here's a more normal looking game, and I'm getting 200 to 270 frames a second. This is on a GTX 1070. I'm at stock clocks. And I have all the YouTube feeds are on autoplay, so if any of those 1080p streams drop, I am still running at full frame. So that is that. All right, let's see what else. Hey, thanks Chris for subbing. I appreciate it. I'll have more videos when I do some reviews, and I have about a little over 1 hour long review of the Gigabyte board that'll be broken down by chapter, if you will, so you don't waste your time watching stuff you don't care about. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, Jorge, whoops. I probably shouldn't. It does not like having all of that running right now. But Jorge, I would expect when Ryzen 2 or Zen Plus comes out, you'll probably have a higher overclock, because as the manufacturing process matures, you're going to have better dies. And there's rumor that they have a different series coming out already that's binned a little higher, kind of like a Black Edition Ryzen. So even before Zen 2 or Zen Plus comes out, you should see a better performing unit. Sorry, I didn't realize I killed the webcam there. Yeah, the X399, so for anyone who hasn't read about this, the rumor about the X399 is it's going to support dual socket, possibly, and the new Naples-based CPU cores, or CPUs, which are 16-core, 32-thread. They do operate at lower frequencies, which I think are in the high 2s. So even though that's awesome for having core count, and it's good for people who do just virtual machines or just, rendering, things like that, it's going to make a more significant impact on gaming. So if you don't need all those threads, I still don't recommend it. Yeah, thanks Fouts, I appreciate it. You have a good night, sir. Yeah, if you do a lot of VMs, it'd be good. Plus, honestly, my biggest concern right now is there's a 64 gigabyte limitation with Ryzen 7 or any of the AM4 chips. So, for anyone who does a lot of VMs, I do a lot, but I don't need this machine to handle that much because I have an actual lab. This is more for testing. 64 gigs can get eaten up very quickly, especially if you do network-based VMs or cyber network defense type stuff, like sniffing out traffic or anything that's really intensive. They require anywhere from 36 to 48 gigs of RAM per VM. So that gets eaten up. And I think the X399 is supposed to support 128 gigs of RAM. I really hope it supports 256 because that would be awesome. Let's see. Yep, labs are fun. Don't worry, when you're done being a CS student, you won't be broke anymore. It's a good investment. So currently, I'm not in performance mode, but I don't see the CPU's cores going up or down right now. So there might be a little issue with the sleep state. Have a good night, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for subbing. Yeah, so I guess, guys, we're kind of at an impasse right now. It's getting pretty late. We still have 25 people watching. I appreciate the likes and the subs and all the comments. This is live, so I'm glad a few things broke because it exposes some things and creates a discussion. But if you have any specific questions that are left, whether it be Ryzen or other technology that's relevant to this in any way, you know, feel free to let me know. I try to cover more than just games. I actually review cars once in a while too. I race some cars for Lexus, so I kind of go all over the place. Oh, if you have a red teaming internship, that's awesome. Hopefully it's for a good group. You can, you know what? Send me a message. I'm trying to think of the best way to get you my information. But I can always help you too. I'm in cyber network security or cybersecurity defense and all that stuff. So try to reach out to me. I have a website you can comment on, just gadgetrytech.com, and I can coordinate some things with you there. There's actually a form where you can email me. So just do that, and I'll can always let you know about some resources. Yeah. Or hey, thanks, man. Yeah, it's the performance is there. Again, as I've demonstrated too, I like Intel and I like AMD. They have different strengths at the moment. I don't like Intel's business practices, but AMD, I mean, any company with that volume would do similar stuff. If you want something that's rock solid right now and you're just doing gaming, then I would still go with Intel. I hate to say it, people are going to get pissed. But that's only if you're doing overclocking and you don't want to deal with random system crashes like you just saw. I feel like the Intel chipset is just a little bit more mature because it's been out for a while. However, the one nice thing about AMD, the AM4 socket's supposed to be supported for at least 4 years. So as the new BIOS updates come out, as you see Zen Plus come out and Zen 3, whatever they're going to call it, you can stick with the same platform. You don't have to buy new hardware. Intel likes to change their stuff every 1 to 2 years. So God forbid you want to upgrade your processor in 2 years, you have to buy a new motherboard again, and who knows how that'll affect other connections. Yeah, Intel does a really good job. They have a huge budget. I mean, the fact that AMD did this with their R&D budget compared to Intel is shocking. I mean, this is a 50% improvement on IPC from their last CPU. That's ridiculous. I mean, granted, they've been working on it for several years, but that performance jump is really, really necessary right now. So you have a social... Yeah, we can talk about that. Reach out. Red Teamers, I know some of the best ones in the country, and the Red Team guys, they have very unique personalities. I know one of the more highly regarded ones, and he has a very unique skill set. So here's the thing, June. They can't just drop their prices because then they admit that they made a subpar, not subpar, that they overcharged the chip. So they have to kind of keep their prestigiousness or prestige factor intact. Intel can very much afford to slash their prices and undercut AMD, but it would sacrifice what the perception is that they've earned as a high quality, expensive chip. So it's kind of a catch-22. Yeah, you are right. That revenue stream is drastically different, and a lot of AMD's comes from the console gaming. So again, this is well, I'll just run a couple things in the meantime if people are bored. I'm gonna run Cinebench again. So we've run CS:GO. If anyone that just tuned in, I've noticed we've got some that went down, but some went up. But we've successfully crashed this computer. We've locked out CPU cores that required me to unplug the computer and plug it back in. We've run several VMs and Chrome tabs while playing a game, and we had some stability issues, but no frame issues. I still hit over, I think, what, 150, 200 frames. Let me make sure. Cool. So, yeah, overall, pretty successful night. And there's a Cinnamon score of 1470 at stock clocks. I think it's about time to wrap up. Temps are high. Yeah, let's have that temp discussion real fast before I close up here, because it's getting pretty late. This is at full clock. It's not, I shouldn't say full clock. It's at 3.5 gigahertz, and it's not scaling down right now. The 55C is before the temperature offset of 20 degrees, so it's really 35C right now. So even though it's at that frequency, the temps are still pretty low. That is on an air cooler with a moderate fan profile that's running fairly quiet. So I could easily drop a few more degrees off. The Intel i7s have some of them, and I guess it has to do with the BIOS on some of the motherboards too, because they're adding a lot of voltage to them that people are finding. But the 7700K can hit insane overclocks of 5 gigahertz, so they will run pretty hot. And when you add the extra voltage that's required, if you're lucky enough to get a 5 gigahertz chip, they get really warm. Much warmer than what you'll see with AMD. And that's not because AMDs just run cooler, they just can't overclock as high as Intel. So you're not going to see those voltages and speeds that are impacting it as much. It does have to do with the way the die is designed. AMD has a very efficient switching mechanism inside for the transistors. They were able to save a lot of wire, which lowers the temps.